You're so smart.
Hey, welcome everybody. Today's October 2nd, 2022,
All right.
right?
That's official. Yeah.
Outstanding. Here we go. It's good to see y'all. I think we'll have more people coming, although we'd had a ton of people text us and tell us they weren't going to make tonight's call, but it's all good. We're excited to see those of you who are here, and we're excited to talk to you a little bit about tonight about what's been on our hearts and just a lesson, if you will, from our own personal experience and our own personal life, and at least hundreds, if not thousands of clients actually that we've worked with over the years. And so want to encourage you in your mindset as you begin to go into the lesson this evening. Simply look for at least one thing that you can begin to implement on a daily basis and add to your routine right now. You know, if you know anything much about Married for a Purpose, then you know that what we talk about and what we teach has way more to do with your thoughts and tooling your thinking than it does with a bunch of, to-do lists, right? And so even the questions that Julie's going to wrap the call up with will be meant to provoke thoughts about your thinking and what it is that you're thinking about. We're going to talk from a very practical standpoint. One of the things, babe, that I know that we have observed in some seasons of our marriage, in our own marriage, and certainly in a lot of other marriages, as we've worked with many over the years, is that sometimes as a couple, we begin to define our relationship or define us by our differences. He likes that and I like this, and she wants this and he wants that, right? And he likes outdoors and she doesn't like bugs and indoors, and you know what I mean? And so
Hey, now.
a little close to home.
A little close to home there, buddy.
Anyway, shoe fits. So but anyway, it's easy to get in a habit of defining our relationship and defining us by our differences. And sometimes that can work its way into a very unhealthy pattern, really, if you begin to think about it. And so as we start out, just a seed thought is, are you defining your relationship? Do you find yourself talking about your differences a lot? Maybe even in simple things, again, like what you like for recreation, what kind of foods you like, what temperature you like in your home, things of that
Do you
nature.
put the toilet paper on? No, we're not going to.
Well, there's that.
There
There's
is
the
that,
toothpaste
the
things and all those
toothpaste.
common things. Where the socks go. Do the socks go on the floor by the clothes basket, or do they go in it?
The underwear always go in it, though.
Yes, but the socks, it's nominal, right? Anyway, we're just being silly. But the question really is do you find yourself in the habit of defining your relationship based on your differences or based on what it is that you share in common? Maybe more pointedly, how about your parenting? Do you find your parenting in your relationship by your differences or by the things that you share in common? Because here's what we know. There is only one way to build, and that's to build on common ground. You will never build forward. You will, listen to me, you will never build anything by pointing out your differences and defining yourself by your differences. You want to see how that works? You look at United States politics in the last several years. There are those and then there are these, right? And there is no middle ground in between. And what's happened to our nation in the process? It's become more and more and more divisive, rather than learning how to build on common ground. And so in your marriage relationship, obviously, as we kick off, I want you just to begin to think about how you can begin to define your relationship based on what it is that you share in common and build habits around defining your relationship, talking about, like, how do you do this? You talk about the things that you share in common, and you discover things that you share in common rather than things that you don't share in common, because that's low-hanging fruit, and all it's going to do is make you suck worse, and it's going to tear your relationship apart. It's not going to help you get where you're trying to get unless you're trying to get separated and pointed in two different directions, and I don't think that's what you want. So with that, love, what is the title of tonight's lesson?
So tonight's call is 3 ways to stay connected: body, mind, and soul. And so one of the
Body.
things, body, yes, mind and soul. So how do you stay connected? We've been married now for almost 24 years. I know some of you are newlyweds, some of you have been married longer than that. Here's the truth though. Once we pass the dating stage and we've spent more than maybe a year together, the novelty of the relationship can wear off. And so one of the things that we talk about, one of the ways that you intentionally stay connected is to be intentional daily, right? If you're always intentionally daily, then there's never going to be that rut that sets in. And we start talking about, what helps us to be intentional? What are some of the best practices? Because you guys see us cutting up, but the truth is on any given day, we can wake up on the wrong side of the bed. And if we're not careful, those days can start to get elongated. And all of a sudden we're looking at one another and we're bored with one another. We find ourselves doing kind of the same old, same old. So if you find yourself with maybe some of these symptoms or characteristics, this is some of the things to make you aware that you're starting to get on some maybe shaky ground. All right. Are you ready for them? If you find yourself bored, doing kind of the same old kind of activities, when there's a lack of curiosity, or maybe you find yourself being critical of your spouse, finding their faults, you lack the kindness that you once had, or you lack appreciation for your spouse. Maybe you fell into the pattern of being practical versus adventurous. And that's really where, when we were talking, it was like, what helps us to keep our love young? Well, there are times where we get stuck in the humdrum of life, just like the rest of you. And when we catch ourselves doing that, the thing that we become very intentional is to pretend as though we're dating again, to put that best foot forward. I remember when we first started dating, man, I was really intentional about how I looked, what I wore. I wanted to be appealing to Greg. And so I was always, like, what do I look like in this outfit? And I was looking from every angle. And now he catches me most of the time with flip-flops and a ponytail, no makeup, and what he calls affectionately my poopy pants, because they're my baggy sweats, right?
Outside of the poopy pants, I'm all about the rest of the stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because I think she's hot like that, but the poopy pants need to go. I actually thought I had them thrown away at one point.
I found them. Yeah.
She's got them anyway. So the poopy pants still make their debut from time to
They're
time.
just baggy and comfortable. It's for those fat days that
They just look like you crapped a load in your drawers is what it looks like anyway.
So here's the point though, like we are intentional to date one another. And when we first dated, one of the things I know about me is I was a lot more adventurous. I learned to shoot a gun. I learned to scuba dive. Like I was willing to try some new things.
I'm an adrenaline junkie,
Yeah,
so
yeah. So with all of that, I think that one of the ways that we can be intentional is if we're in the humdrum, it's like, okay, what can we do that would be maybe a little outside of the box that we both want to try to do? What would something be that would be fun together? What would you add?
So I'm just thinking about when we got it right, and then I'm thinking about when we blew it. So as Julie said, we always try to teach very authentically in the things, most of the time, either that we've had a recent struggle with or a documented struggle, if you will, that we overcome, because we're not perfect. We blow it just like everybody does. Trust me. Marriage takes a lot of work. It's worth the work, but it takes intentionality and it takes work. So I know that for a season, we had been so busy with work, ministry, and kids, that I remember looking at you and telling you, like, we need to work on having more fun and adventure, because I'm not trying to be offensive to you. And I wasn't picking a fight, but I remember sharing with her, like, I need a safe place to land. And we work together 24/7 from our home, or we're on the road together doing conferences or reboots and working with clients or something like that. And so, it's demanding. And it's easy for us to get in a humdrum. And I remember thinking, God, when I see my wife anymore, all I think about is work. That is not cool. It's kind of one of the byproducts of being couplepreneurs together. We've always worked together and been entrepreneurial in business, in ministry, and things of that nature. And so there was a great opportunity for us. And so that's when we blew it. And I'll talk about how we rebounded from there. But part of what helped us rebound is, I know, one, you began to try to plan for some adventure and things of that nature. But I also thought about, what were the things that I did? So I want you to think about when you were dating. When were you putting your best foot forward? Because one of the best practices is simply put your best foot forward. And listen, I'm not trying to pick on you. I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want you to feel defeated when I ask this question. And maybe you'll say today, that's great. It's a rhetorical question, but the question is, when's the last time you consciously put your best foot forward for your spouse? I'm not asking, listen to me, I'm not asking you when's the last time your spouse put their best foot forward for you. Those kind of questions will get you in trouble. Because here's why. Because you'll find what you're looking for. And if you're asking those kind of questions, then the object of the game is for you to lose. You understand what I'm saying? In other words, you want to put a point on the board and say, I'm the one that's getting the short end of the stick. Because when you lose, you win in that situation. And that's not how thriving marriages work. Okay. So the question is when's the last time you put your best foot forward for your spouse? And is there an opportunity yet today? Or could you intentionally put your best foot forward? What might that look like? It might look like, well, one of the things that I remember that I did when I got it right was our first date, actually.
Oh, yeah, it
I
was.
finally caught you.
Yeah.
She tried to run again, but I outran her. Anyhow, I meticulously planned to buy you a particular CD.
Yep, that I'd been wanting.
And CD, that dates us, right? Anyway, to buy a particular CD. And we were together in the mall for, I don't know, I even remember how I pulled it off, but I bought the CD and I made sure that she didn't know I bought it. And I made sure she didn't know I had it. And then before I left her house that evening, I kind of put it in a place that she would find, but not until I was gone. You tracking? I put some thought into how I could do something special for her and get her something that I knew that she wanted. And so, yeah, one of our coaches said, anyway, I'm not going to go with that. But anyway, so how can you pause? Can you put in your calendar? I do this, literally, I do this. There is a day of the week. She doesn't know what day of the week it is because it's in my personal calendar, which she cannot see. And it says, discover her. What that is just a trigger for me. And I've done something similar to this for years, because if not, I'll get in a rut and I'll forget. Hello? I'll get in a rut and I'll forget too. I teach this stuff and I'll get in a rut and forget. But I put in there, discover Julie. And what that reminds me to do is to do something like that each week. Maybe it won't be as cool as buying her a CD that she wanted, or something like that, and hiding it and, and it being all cool, but something that's very, very intentional to communicate. I see you. I love you. I value you. I really like to be able to surprise you sometimes with getting you something or doing something for you that you don't expect.
Yep. I love that.
Now it looks more like doing the dishes for her. Not always, though.
So here's the application, and it's really simple. If you're taking notes, or put this in your calendar, like Greg said, but what is one way that I can connect intentionally and put my best foot forward? Maybe it is being adventurous, right? Maybe it's planning an activity. One tip there, if you're planning an activity, plan an activity that your spouse will think is fun and that you can enjoy and participate as a good sport. It may not be at the top of your list though, but you're planning something intentionally for your spouse. And what we found is sometimes one spouse will plan an activity and they're all excited about it, but they fail to put their spouse in mind when they plan the activity. And then they're disappointed because their spouse wasn't exuberant or excited about it, but it's because there was maybe just one quality.
I gotta tell the story.
All right, tell the
I know
story.
you don't want me to, but I'm going to because I
Alright.
think it'll make more sense and it'll make the application that much more. So we have a current client and in one of our calls recently in the last few weeks, they had gone ballroom dancing. And so the dude is thinking, I knocked it out of the park, man. Took my chick ballroom dancing, but it was a work event. He serves a very well-to-do clientele. And so it was kind of a work event, but they went ballroom dancing, took his wife, and all that good stuff. And so he really thought he knocked it out of the park. I think most of us can understand why he would have thought that. But during our coaching call, she brought it up and she said, I'd love to go ballroom dancing, but I want to go ballroom dancing with you because it doesn't fill my love tank when we go ballroom dancing and it is a company event,
And we could understand from her perspective,
Totally.
because then it became almost image driven. It had to be they had to be polished. It was performance versus fun. Just out there, the two of them alone together. And so as
Absolutely.
you're planning your activity, it probably isn't going to be ballroom dancing, but hey, if it is, get some videos and share them with us, right? That'd
I
be
mean,
cool.
most of the chicks are like, I'm into doing some ballroom
Yeah.
dance. Maybe some of the guys, I don't know.
But be sure to really think about the activity, the adventure of it, the fun of it, and then lean in full on. All right. Number 2. So that's number 1, be intentional and remember the beginnings. Remember to date one another. Put your best foot forward. Number 2, live to discover one another.
That's
I
a good
love
one.
that one, right? So when I know sometimes when I know I'm not discovering Greg, when I become again critical, or when I begin to keep score, or when I begin to think like almost accusatory of him, like, well, I sure have done this and I've done this, and then I wish he would do this. It's not focusing on discovering him. And so to guard my own mind, to keep our love fresh and to keep us connected, when I'm doing it right, what I'm actually doing is I'm looking to still discover him, to ask him questions, to find out what it is that he's thinking, how he's feeling. And I have to tell you, over the last few years, I found things about his childhood that I never knew.
Some she didn't want to.
Yeah, but I intentionally plan conversations, and there are times, guys, those of you that have been around for a while, we actually have a whole list of conversation starters. If you're not privy to that list, you can find that list by going to marriedforapurpose.com, scroll all the way down to the bottom and subscribe, and you can actually get those conversation starters. If you can't find that, let me know. We'll be happy to send them to you. But we pull out those conversation starters, and some of them are like dream together. Some of them are intimacy, into me, see, and fun and flirty kind of conversations. But we try to break up the monotony and those same old conversations, or conversations around ministry, or conversations around kids, by having a conversation that's completely unexpected. And where we're at in life, we have to be intentional about that. We have to plan for those kinds of conversations. If Chris and Tina were on, I would say they always had the Sunday night locker room. And I'm like, man, that is so cool. Like, they have a Sunday night locker room to grab a book, have a conversation, and talk about some things that they probably didn't talk about Monday through Saturday.
Mhm.
How about you? What do you do to discover me?
Well, I was just thinking, there's a couple of things, and one of them is sort of a point for the last one that we made. We talked a little bit about, well, we didn't talk about it, but having date night, and if you're not having date night, I think that having date night is really, really important, y'all, to try to break up the routine. But the point of the date night is to break up the routine.
Right.
You know what I mean? Don't miss that point. And if you can't do that every week, it's okay. Maybe it's every other week, but discern what that is. And I think it helps when you have a date night that you plan which night of the week that it's actually going to be.
Mhm.
And the reason is because it creates a little bit of excitement and a little bit of an opportunity to plan for the date night versus like, hey, you want to go eat dinner tonight? Do you want to, you know what I mean? That doesn't feel like a date night really. But if it's date night and it's communicated, one of the best practices that I have for my business clients is to make sure that their calendar is published, right? And the reason that I bring that up here is because if you've still got kids at home, as an example, if they know such and such night is mom and dad's date night, our kids actually really came to want to defend that for us.
We get all grouchy and they're like, you guys need to go out on a date.
Legit. They would. Like the energy's all off, and of course they're raised in our household, so go figure, but anyway, they really began to defend that and we defended it. And so what I think is important here is that we got in the habit, let me personalize it. What happened to us just not so long ago is that we were trying to squeeze fun and connection in to all of the other business of life. Okay. Listen to me. It's a priority. Don't feel guilty about planning and being very intentional about your fun, your connection, and your intimacy, by the way. It is God's design. He made us to want those things, all of those, by the way, and rest. Do y'all rest together? If you're not, then you may need to really become united together in defending those times. So rather than fitting fun in or fitting date night in or fitting intimacy in, for that matter, or rest in, I would challenge you. Number one, are you taking a Sabbath? I mean a real Sabbath. I don't care what day of the week it is. I'm talking about a day where you rest and land the plane and chill and disengage from work. It's a biblical concept. God himself did it. And in the American way, since everybody I can see on here right now is in the United States this time, but no matter where you are, I think our world has become busier. Technology's allowed us to do more and faster. And we got microwaves and fast food restaurants, you know what I mean? And so it's developed this lifestyle where we are constantly trying to pound 10 pounds of taters and 5 pound sack. Are you tracking? And so we sometimes want to wear this badge of I'm busy, because if I'm busy, I must be important and things must be going well. And that's a bunch of bunk. Okay. Busy and success are not the same thing. And so I want to encourage you that we discovered sometimes the hard way is prioritize this and plan. Some of y'all are probably doing better than what others are. But the first question again is, are you taking a Sabbath? Second question is are you planning for fun and connection together? Or are you just allowing it to fall in when you can squeeze it in? Because if that's the way it's going, a little bit of effort goes a long way, team. And it doesn't have to be every single week. We would love it if you could do that. We think it's necessary. Sabbath is every week, but planning for some fun and connection that is meaningful for you and carving out that time to discover one another. And when we're running from one thing to the next, it's impossible for us to really discover one another unless we're in a crisis. I have one more point on that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
When it comes to this particular point of discover your spouse, live to discover one another, I want to encourage you to be a safe place for your spouse. The last few years, there have been plenty of challenges for us as a family, both the little Gorman household and then the Gorman and/or Julie's family, my family, extended family, within our business and even in our own relationship. There have been a lot of challenges. Julie and I have both gone through some changes. God's really leveraged these last couple of years to put us through some tests, to refine us and refine our relationship even, and to test our relationship even as we go to the next level. And so one of the things that that I think, if I can be so bold as to say so, that we did really, really well is that in the difficult times, we were really intentionally a safe place. Is your spouse going through something right now? It's a rhetorical question. Don't answer me. Don't raise your hands. Okay. But if they're not, then at some point they will. And when they do, will you be prepared to be genuinely a safe place for them? Or will you take offense? Because the temptation and the knee jerk most of the time is take offense. It's your freaking problem. You know what I mean? What's wrong with you? You ever said that? It's a loaded question. What I'm saying is, it's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Mm.
When you're going through a hard time, do you need somebody to kick you while you're down? Have you done that to your spouse, though? They come in, they're in a pissy mood, and they're, slinging crap all over the place. And the next thing you know, you're, what's your deal anyway? You know what I mean? And you're reading them the riot act because they're off their square. How'd that go? I know how it went because I've done it. I don't want to kick this woman. I am not designated by God and or man to put her in her place and make sure she knows where it's at. Quite the opposite. It's to put her in her place and to let her know where she belongs. This is my queen right here, legit. Like, my job is to try to bring out the very best to cause her to blossom and to bloom into all that God created her to be, and vice versa as well. And so I think we did a fairly decent job on most days of really operating in grace. So if you recognize that your spouse is going through some things, pray, ask guidance of the Holy Spirit, take some time to think about how you would want to be treated or questioned or prayed over if you were dealing with something that has you off your square. Sometimes we just need space, don't we? There's times that I literally look at Julie in the morning time and say, babe, I'm off my square. So I just need a little bit of grace today and I need a little bit of space. And she totally gets it now, and she gives me what I need during that time period. And usually, because she does that within a couple of hours, most of the time, I'll be able to come back around and tell her, thank you, I'm feeling better or whatever.
Yeah.
So when I was talking, was there anything that?
Yeah, I think that the thing that's difficult is in our relationship, because we're always, and I say I'm talking you all as well, in a relationship, the marriage relationship, it's one of the most hardest to govern, because it's the place where we both want to just let our guards down and we want the other person to meet our needs because we've been out there serving and meeting everybody else's needs. And so when we come home, the temptation is we take that servant hat off and we expect to be served rather than be the one to continue to serve. So when we can be intentional to discover one another, when we can be intentional, like if I start feeling or noticing things that Greg is lacking, I want to instantly capture that moment and go, okay, what do I love about this man? Rather than what's lacking about him, and be intentional to discover the things that I appreciate about him. And
Somebody needs to write
likewise,
that one down.
find what you love, not what's lacking.
In the moment where it is the last thing that you want to do, that's the very moment where it matters, really.
I have at different moments, and I know Greg's done this for me. So this is what we're talking about, being a safe place, because it's so easy to get offended when you're wanting to just have somebody serve you, right? Just please, can you just not have any issues today? That's where you get sometimes. And so it's those moments. This is when it really counts, guys. It's going, okay. Truth is I love this guy. Truth is, he's a great daddy. Truth is, he is a man of God. And I begin to rehearse those messages in my mind. It allows me to not become offended, find the things that I love about him and begin to express those things. So if he looks at me in the morning and I'm like, I'm all excited about the day, I'm ready to, create charts. And he comes in, he's like, oh, babe, I'm off my square. I'm like, really?
Hey, you're getting a little close to home.
No, no, you haven't done this for a long time.
I'm just
The
kidding.
point being though, is it really is in those moments, like, is there anything I can do for you? Because I want to be a safe place. I don't want to add fuel to the fire, like, well, of course, buddy, you always got, you always wake up on the wrong side of the bed. It's not that. And if we're not careful, offense steps in. So we find what we love, not what's lacking. And so here's the
Intentionally.
intentionally, if you can, here's the daily ask this. This will help you stay in the routine of staying connected, right? 3 ways to stay connected: body, mind, and soul. Ask yourself, what is one thing that I appreciate about my spouse? What do I love about them? What do I appreciate about them? What am I so grateful for that they do? I remember when we were first early on in our relationship, and guys, if you've been around again, you know that the first 2 to 7 years of our marriage relationship was tumultuous at best. And I remember there was a time where I just started with the most simplistic thought, and it was, thank you, God, that he is such a good father. Because I had nothing else that I was appreciative about with him. I found offense everywhere else, but I started with where I was at and build on it. And so the question is start with where you're at, find what you love about your spouse, and be intentional to meditate on those things. You actually covered pretty good step number 3. And step number 3, the third way to stay connected, is to look for opportunities to laugh and rest together. So you talked about the Sabbath. You talked about on a weekly basis, having that place of just resting. Guys, if you're not doing this, trust me, it will make all the difference in the world. If you could take one day a week away from all your labor, away from all of the other strenuous activities, and concentrate on just resting, whatever replenishes you, body, mind, soul, that you both enjoy together.
Maybe you need to ask that. Maybe you need to start with that question. What does replenish me and or us, body, mind, and soul? Right? Body,
So when
mind,
you're
and spirit.
physically tired, what replenishes you? When you're emotionally or intellectually wrung out, what replenishes you? If you're spiritually depleted, what are those activities? That is a Sabbath, right? For some of you, it might be bicycling or going hiking. For me, that's not going to be replenishment. That's going to be a whole lot of work. But if that's what your jam is, then do that, right? If it's what replenishes you, that's the activities you want to welcome. But make sure you're having that Sabbath of rest. So on
This week for me, it was cutting coconuts and getting some things, we had a bunch of ripe coconuts that needed to be taken down on the trees. My neighbor was wanting some, so I went and cut them down. And I just enjoyed being out and working with my hands, or working in the garden or something like that. And I'm just saying that because we're not talking about a religious practice here of the Sabbath. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about practically what is it that refreshes you and replenishes you. And for some of you, that means you do something with your hands. For some of you, that means that you veg out and you binge Netflix or something. You know what I mean? I don't know. But although I caution you on that, but anyway, whatever it takes for you to land the plane and to feel refreshed, and particularly together.
Yep.
In this case.
So here's the third and the final kind of activity. If you're taking notes, frequently ask yourself, what do we both like to do for fun? Plan one outing or one unique thing to connect in a shared, enjoyable activity every single week. And be sure to make sure that part of that is a weekly replenishment of just rest for your body, rest for your mind, rest for your soul. That's it.
So here's the scoop as we wrap up. We didn't give y'all any rocket science tonight. In fact, if you know us very well, you're not going to get a lot of rocket science here, okay? Not rocket scientists. But what you got are some fundamentals, some basic plays. And if you run those fundamentals, see, these are the things that slip through the cracks. These are the things that we start getting sloppy on in reality, in the day-to-day of our relationship and our marriage and our parenting and things of that nature. But what we found is that if we pay attention to these, if we pay attention to these things and we learn to run the basic plays, just like any good coach is going to have you run the basic plays over and over again. If you've been around long, you've heard me say that multiple times, and you'll continue to, because it puts a mental picture in our mind for our marriages as well, and for our family, for our parenting and such. It's not rocket science. It's God's design after all.
Mm.
And it just reminds me that in truth, God's word is either for us, and God is either for us, or he's against us, one or the other. And so I'm saying that not because I think God's against us, but what I'm thinking is like, I'm challenging your own thoughts, because I think sometimes we can feel like that somewhere in between, and and we explain away why we can't adhere to what God has told us to do in his word. You tracking with me? Is this okay? So find a way to validate it. Find a way to prove it right, not wrong. Defend it. It's for you. It's not because he's a, lightning chuck and, buzzkill. It's not. It's because he wants to bless you. And this is the pathway to the most abundant life. And I say this because every single one of the things that we talked about this evening, we can back up scripturally, right? Because they are all things that we've been told in one sense or another in scripture to do and to be for one another. And so I hope you were able to pick up at least one good best practice. And one thing that you can begin, I want to caution you, listen, there may have been several things that resonated with you. And if there are, I hope that there were. And if there were, I want to caution you, don't try to implement all of them this week. Okay. Make a list and put it someplace and come back to it. But make sure that you really develop a new habit and leverage one of these. Which one is going to move the ball furthest down the field right now in your life? Right? Which one of those is the priority right now that you, in your marriage, in your home, needs to be implemented? And then begin to run that play over and over again until you can do it flawlessly without thinking. As you do that, your marriage improves by a fair margin. Then you go back to what you wrote down from tonight's lesson, what you took from tonight's talk. And you look for the personal application and you implement one more thing. And honestly, for those of you that attend these calls regularly, even our coaches that teach and train and do a lot of the same things we do, you're going to find that your marriage is going to incrementally continue to just up level, and you're going to be able to tap into the fullness of life. This is our heart's prayer for you, that you really would tap into the fullness of life and all that it is that God's already got predestined and designed for you and your spouse.
Love it. All right. So, hey, any questions, comments, thoughts? What are some of your best practices? We're open. If you have something, raise your hand or just unmute yourself. Going once. Oh, come on, Parkmans. I know you got some words of wisdom. You're sitting back there way too comfortable in that chair. You got something for us, don't you? What is
Well, I don't know about best practices, but like you, we've been married 25 years, going on 26, and learning to truly serve each other in a way that's meaningful is everything. We very early on, did the love languages, and we've taught for years that you need to, do the other person's love language. We've also come to understand it's sometimes it's easier just to truly accept that their love language means they love you, and to accept it that way.
Yeah.
And some of the things that you guys were talking about, being intentional about doing things together and so forth and so on, not as difficult, because I can truly accept that her words of affirmation, which is like gag me with a spoon, means that she loves me. And
his acts of service mean that he loves me, even though I'd rather him sit with me and tell me how pretty I am.
So, it's all good stuff, and you have to be intentional
And
And-
dating each other is huge.
Huge.
Dating each other is huge because I know, like early on in our marriage, when it started to get, with kids and everything, like, oh my gosh, how are we getting to this place again? It was because we started to look at the negative parts about each other and being able to look at the positive in each other and go, okay, I married you because of this, and focus on that and let that be the man I saw again instead of the little things you pick up along the way.
Right.
Yeah. We just appreciate being part of the group and everything. We're looking forward to meeting more and more people and working with y'all. We appreciate you guys' love and honesty and integrity, authenticity. Yeah.
Well, we love you all too, and thanks for letting me call on you. Appreciate you guys.
Time.
Yeah. I just like that red. Is it a red chair, an orange chair? I put on my glasses to try to see what color is that.
Well, it's actually a brown couch with like a orange.
There
Oh,
we
oh, oh,
go.
okay.
Yeah, I like it. Sorry,
Oh.
you're just so majestic there.
Well, this is her new office. We don't have everything hung up yet. We had the grand opening yesterday. So
Awesome, yay.
Yay, congrats on the new office, eh?
yeah.
Mhm.
We love you.
Appreciate
Okay, so Nathan.
Nathan, you're up.
Bring it, man.
Yeah, so I love what you guys said about dating your spouse once a week. For Willow and I, it's really about pursuing your spouse every day. Because it's when you're dating in that dating phase and you're like, oh, she's kind of cute, or hey, he's cute too. Like, you think about him, you send him a little text, you write him notes, you're like, hey, I'm gonna give you a little back massage, like, while you're driving or something. And it's just those small little things that you do that creates that connection point, because too much of the time we're running around and doing, who knows what, because for those of you who don't know, we have this little thing right here.
Oh.
Oh, there we go. We were waiting for
I
that.
have it.
And this
We have
one-
all the other things there too. Yeah, but it's like even in the midst of when there's transition and things changing, it's really easy to lose sight of the basics, and you have to keep track of those basics. It's kind of like reading. Sometimes you forget that words are made up of letters, and you got to remember to do those letters, because otherwise your sentences fall short and things fall through the cracks, and man, your relationship starts to suffer. So we experienced that maybe I don't know, for a couple of days while we were trying to remember what it's like to have another small human being. But yeah, I really love that about dating your spouse once a week, but encouraging people to truly pursue your spouse every day. How could you do one small thing to let your spouse know that you're thinking of them? Even if it's bringing them a coffee, shooting them a text with hearts and emojis of I love you, thinking of you. I don't know.
I love
Yeah,
that.
break the routine, man. Thanks for those comments. I appreciate that. Julie did in a particular season early on, when honestly we were really struggling, and it was one of the turning points in our marriage, actually. She became very, very intentional about praying once she woke up, before she got up, and really, and then asking herself, okay, how can I be of a mindset and look for ways to serve my family today, to serve Greg specifically, and then serve the family at large. And it may sound like really,
Yeah, it's show me one way to demonstrate love.
Yep.
To my family, to my husband, and to my kids. And I prayed that probably for 4 years straight until it actually started to settle in my heart, and it became a little bit more second nature.
yeah. And I just think, again, it's so easy, like Nathan was saying, to get in a rut and get in a routine. And I'm a change junkie. A lot of people resist change. In this season of my life, I'm a little bit more comfortable with a little bit more of a steady state than what I ever have been in my life. But I say that just to say, like, mundane, it takes the life out of me. If we get in too much of a routine, like, I die inside. I need change. And so, but sometimes it's not up to Julie to create that. It's up to me to create that, and not by creating some radical change or something like that. We've done that, and we hope not to do that a lot anymore, because that takes a lot of work. But just how can I really do something that is out of the ordinary? Maybe not every single day, but at least weekly, to communicate to her that I love her, that I actually see her,
Mm.
that I see her, right? As a human being, for crying out loud, instead of the old ball and chain, that I'm hanging with every day. And I just think it's easy for us to get in a rut, and that's exactly what inspired this particular lesson and the particular points that we brought up this evening.
So one final thought, and this one is probably the newest that we landed on. When you're in a dark season and you feel like you have some things that you need to talk through or
That's a whole nother lesson.
overcome it. And we will spend some time on this lesson, but for those of you that may be in a difficult season, one of the things that we recently learned was not everything has to be talked about. Sometimes you just simply need to melt into one another's arms. And it's almost like just heal. Just choose to not have an issue that you have to talk about. Don't have a problem that you need to fix, but rather just fall into one another's arms and choose to say, I love you. I choose you. I want to discover you. I want to start afresh. I just want to have fun, because sometimes there's two realities that are going on, and we're going to spend, I think maybe not the next call, but somewhere in there, we're going to be doing a phone call, a community call on that particular topic.
No
of
question about
of
it.
how
because
to
it's too
heal
big.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a big thing for us. And so I'll reserve any further comment on that, just because I think
It's
it's a
so
whole
tempting,
nother,
but it is
well,
a
it's
whole
just a
thing.
whole nother talking of itself, and we're getting close to the top of the hour, and I don't
Yeah.
want to.
So guys, we appreciate you. We love you. Let me give you the final 3 steps again. 1, what is one way I can connect intentionally and put my best foot forward? 2, what's one thing that I appreciate about my spouse and live to discover them? And then 3, what do you both love to do for fun, and how can you rest together, body, mind, and soul?
And don't forget where we started out in the introductory, define yourself by what you share in common, rather than defining yourselves in your relationship by what you don't share in common. We've enjoyed our time with y'all. Hope you picked up some good stuff. And until next time, which will be 2 weeks from tonight, behave.
All right, so Father, bless them, keep them, let your peace and your face shine down upon them. And I pray, Lord, that they would take one part of this message and that you would cause it to settle deep into their soul. That would be a new intentionality for them to stay connected.
Mhm.
We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. God
Bless
bless you
y'all.
guys.
We'll see you next round. We'll see you two in just a minute.